Hello everyone and welcome to today's video. We're going to be going over something very special, which is about in-depth war mechanics. This is going to be a series to do with war room war tactics when it comes to PvP. So strap in, stay tuned for more information on PvP and in-depth knowledge on getting a bit of an edge over your opponents. So yes, we're going to be going over some very cool stuff today. We're going to be teaching you guys about some PvP concepts if you're wanting to learn a little bit more about some advanced techniques, because this does help you when it comes to fighting in the PvP realm. So at the moment we're looking at Caltia, and this is in server 33, and if we go into the division right now, you're going to be able to see server 33, 31, 39 and 40 that are in contention. So what we're looking at the moment is a few different zones, but what we're going to be zooming into after we cover the world map is this little bit of a skirmish that is happening right here on the DX side, right? So when we look at the map here, this is when your zone 1 passes open up in Stars Reignited for the first time. And what happens is you have access into zone 2, where you're going to be able to capture your Hydras, as well as your Thunderrock, as well as even a extra Magma Demon, which is located right there on screen. So what we're going to be talking about is map influence, because the thing is, this is where a lot of advanced techniques and advanced map planning for those officers might appreciate this style of video, and the R3s and the average day player that's not really in charge of flag building will still like this style of video, because you're gonna have an understanding of what it means to be building in such a speed race. So as you can see here, we're gonna split this into two zones. We've got the DX zone as well as their union at the top side, and at the bottom here we're going to have the Jedi Alliance. These guys are your Chinese, I believe, players, as well as like Indonesian or Vietnamese. That could be corrected in the comments below, but I believe it's the Chinese Alliance, right? So when this starts out, you obviously start at this pass, and if you are on the DX side, you're going to be starting up at the very top here, right? And the way the map runs, as you can see, there is a center dead zone, as we kind of talk about on the map. And the center dead zone is basically this area that's located in the center, and this is what's going to cause a lot of fighting, because as you can see, this is where the Hydra in Caltia is basically located. So whoever basically can race to the center first and actually get really good control of that area is at a massive advantage. So what you can see through here is the map influence of Jedi. So from the start of the pass opening to currently, which is, I believe, at UTC at 20:30 of the day, you can see they basically have an influence of where this bridge is. So any of this territory now across this land is basically all of the Jedi Alliance, right? So if we colour that in, you can imagine this is all of their zone. But if we flip it now on the DX side, they own almost to this pinch. So this pinch is going to come a little bit more in, and then they hit their barrier. This is also going to flip around and come to this zone. So as we were talking about when we look at now the map itself, if you're looking at map pressure and map influence, the Jedi have a lot of map control because it's a lot more spread out due to obviously the way the map is designed. However, DX have more of a punching force with their way, right? They're clearly going for this center zone right here, which is the main point which we was talking about of the dead zone, right? So when we were thinking about this and we're talking about why this is important, when you are looking at the zones again, if we're looking back all the way from the start, and this is when we go into the very start of combat here, The thing what a lot of players will always forget is if we draw the dead zone back up in the center here, which is anywhere around this zone, if this is the main battlefield for the main fight, right, so where both sides are going to meet up and fight to the death here, you've got to remember the DX members here might have a shorter walk distance to get to this zone. And this is a really important thing, because when we look at the Jedi one has a lot longer to actually reach into this same area. And because of the waviness of the flags, obviously at first this is a bit of a problem when it comes to the Jedi side. Why? Because you got to think, if you have a mass amount of troops now, we're talking hundreds and 200, 300 legions all on the battlefield now. In order to go from your pass where you've just started from to get to this zone, this might take your marches anywhere between 30 to 40 minutes in order to walk there, fight, and if they die, they've got to walk all the way back and then replenish and carry on, right? So it's a massive walk timer for their march. Another thing is to in consideration with the DX one, this clearly is a shorter line. So you can assume their walk distance was between 20 to 30 minutes. So what would this mean is in the battlefield, the Jedi must control the land or the zone that they are fighting in for a lot longer, meaning one of their legions must kill between 2 to 3 or 4 of the DX legions in order to make this worth their while. Because if they're dying just as quick as the DX members, they're going to be losing the battle, right? Because they're not going to be able to replenish the amount of troops that's required to get into that zone. So I hope that makes sense to you guys in the map awareness. This is a little bit more in-depth, as you can imagine, for myself here today, giving you guys a little bit more of a PvP experience and PvP learning program that's hopefully going to be something that you guys enjoy. This is obviously just part one. We're going to be doing a load of these videos with open field gameplay as well, which we have been recording throughout the live streams. So when we go into this zone now, we're going to be looking at basically what we're going to talk about is some terrain combat. Because when we look at this area, which is the current battlefield, you can see obviously the Jedi members all gathered at the bottom of this crevice. And this is very important that they are spread out in this area. Because when we look into here now, this is obviously the only entrance if you are a ground-based unit. And because you're a ground-based unit, we're going to name this ramp now the new dead zone, or the new battlefield dead zone, what you need to be aware of. And why we're going to talk about this and why it's important is you got to think, if you are now DX, and we are talking about obviously the guys at the top here, so DX are defending from the top and Jedi are down here fighting from the bottom, right? What this means is if there is an actual big scale group of fighting, or a load of DX or Jedi members do group together to create a nice murder ball, what it allows the Jedi members to do is actually spread it out and fire as much AoE into this grid. And if you are in the dead zone here, as the name as applies, you are most likely going to die. And the reason is, again, you've got to think, in PvP, you have all the mages, you have all your artifacts like Shadow Blades, as well as the Phoenix Eye. And if you're located in this zone, anywhere in here, any DX member is going to put that AoE in there, and it's going to do a considerable amount of damage and weaken the forces of the Jedi mind. So what can you do from the Jedi mind tricks, right, if you are a Jedi member? And this is where the new mechanics with ranged combat, as well as the flying units, do come in, because you can use some special artifacts too with other units to take advantage of the terrain you are in. So you could still be the Jedi members here, and you could potentially launch a infantry front line into this zone, right? So if we pushed into the dead zone with a front line with your Madeleines, your Neekas, anyone like Garwood, just to try to take as much of the damage as possible, what the Jedi members could do is apply some flanks. Since this is some terrain, as you can see right here, and if we look at the terrain and we actually color it in like a nice pink border here, you're going to see why this is kind of an important factor with flying units right now. Because with your flying units, you're going to be able to cross this border without having to go into the dead zone. And that's going to allow you now to support your front line and help them by shooting down the back line of the DX army, right? So it's a really interesting concept that you're able to do. And the cool thing is, I'm talking about this obviously from the Jedi side, this also works from the DX. So DX can use their ranged and flying units to obviously take an advantage and hit the back line of these marchers, as well as to try and push down over these crevices and take advantage of this. One thing you must be aware of, and what we're going to talk about now is a bit of a positioning thing, is if you are potentially a ranged or flying unit. Because if you are a flying unit as a DX member right now, and you're one of these X's that might be on the, you know, edge of the terrain, shooting down, trying to kill these guys located in this little open area, what you need to be worried of is actually some cavalry, right? Even though there's no flying cavalry units in the game right now, one thing that you can use is the Storm Arrows or the Wolf Woman of Halo. Both artifacts are used to allow you to teleport or blink over terrain, which is actually very scary, because if you're a cavalry player now, you are able to blink into this pocket right now and actually go to town and kill all of these guys on this side without any real punishment. Because again, remember, if you are a cavalry unit, you're going to be using your unyielding rush, which is the main mechanic for the cavalry units. So if we go into the game and showcase that for you guys, just to remind you what we were talking about here. Obviously, if you are a cavalry player, you're gonna need a 1000 rage cost to activate that skill 1 on your Emeries or either your Bakshi or Alistair. But when you check out your actual units, if we actually got the units here, we don't. We check out the units for the cavalry units, which we'll switch over now to. So when we do look at the Wolf Riders, as we was talking, we can see the unyielding rush ability, and as it states, when you approach a ranged unit, so this could be an archer or a mage player, and even if they are a flying march, you know, flying march of either range or the mage, you know, varieties, you're still going to be able to trigger this effect. And when you do, it does give you that 1000 rage factor to your march. And this is very important because when we look at the unit advantage system for the cavalry units, you do have a stronger affinity against the marksman units, and this also is a very strong case against the mages too, because of how weak relatively the mages are, because they kind of lack that physical defense since they are weak against the marchers of the marksman, right? When we look at other units in the field, when we're talking about some special abilities, you've got to remember with your infantry units, when you are talking about trying to help your front line, you do have some special abilities for yourself. Obviously, when you are going into combat, you can trigger your Rampage. A Rampage is an insane ability because this can interrupt that unyielding rush proc from the cavalry units, and it will put a 75% slow onto that target for 8 seconds, and 8 seconds is no joke, and that is why inventory are quite terrified when we're looking at PvP combat. So we're going to go back into some gameplay now. We're going to look at some open field you know, fighting, and give you guys some understanding on what is going on. So here we are looking at some open field combat from earlier with BDM fighting the GD Alliance. This was a really cool fight, and we've got some open field gameplay here to look at. So what's really important here is showcasing how we were talking about earlier, the refresh timers. The BDM Alliance have been pushing really hard into the GD area, meaning the flow of traffic that you can see here from the GD Alliance now is a lot shorter, meaning they can refresh their entire troops really quickly compared to the BDM Alliance. Anything that's being showcased here on screen right now is showing you bad positioning. That is what is the GD members are taking advantage of. So as you notice, the march that was the pink X that was there should have moved up to where the BDM Alliance were at the north side of the map. If they didn't, as you can imagine, the train of the GD members here will be pushing through and killing those guys that are struggling and being out of position to get themselves some free merits. Really cool, a little bit of gameplay to showcase, just some chasing concepts here for the understanding on why it's important to know how far you need to be to refresh your troops. Because when we start looking at these troops now, we're going to see the GD members obviously pushing forward, but you're going to be able to see the BDM rendezvous point. And this rendezvous point is where obviously these guys are all going to be covering together and basically reconsolidating if there's any problems like there is right now, because obviously they'll have their main murder ball, which we was talking about in the influence on how you're going to push forward as a area. Once they might have pushed forward and started fighting, they might have already been building that second murder ball where the original one was, in case anything goes wrong, which obviously can happen because you can't keep your troops up all the time. So what we're seeing here though from this GD member is a really cool, a little bit of showmanship for us, and it's showcasing the power of the flying units. You can see him positioned in this area right now, and anyone in that zone is going to be able to basically get attacked upon by this GD member. Obviously, it's upon the player themselves to be active and aware of their positioning to take advantage of it. Because you can see here right now, GD Emirata were trying to now try and get the kill on the BD member, but was obviously too slow to help. But it's a really good little bit of showcasing of positioning awareness there for that march, because obviously the positioning of that flying march was really good. They could fight anyone on the ground and really easily retreat to that center area to escape. So really good little bit of gameplay there for you guys to take note on when we are talking about, maybe we're thinking about your positioning and your awareness when we are looking at some open field. So here we can see now the BDM members, as we're talking about, a little bit of a small consolidation here, but there is a secondary bridge that we will hopefully be going to where they was going to chill basically and regroup. This is where the GD members will start to obviously regroup themselves. They would push forward into this zone, which was really cool, and obviously by showcasing this, as you can see at the early stages, the GD members right now have that quick 5 to 10 minute refresh timer compared to the big BDM Alliance that all the way located to the northern side that has that big 20-30 minute walk refresh timer. That is all that we was talking about in the first part of this video. So I hope that makes sense to you and why we've come in a big full circle right now with the influence of the map and knowing how long it takes for you guys to obviously march from where you are located to the main battlefield, because if it's a long time and a longer distance for you, you might have to think about positioning in a more defensive stance and allowing you to actually build your flags quicker to the center to allow you to support your troops more efficiently. So that is going to be today's video. I hope you enjoyed it. My name's MrSneakyy, here every single day giving you Call of Dragons content. I am an official Call of Dragons content creator, trying to give you all that edge and knowledge for PvP, PvE, combat, anything to do with Call of Dragons, you name it, we have it on this channel. So if you enjoyed it, smash a like, comment, and a subscribe. But until the next one, stay safe, stay sneaky, and peace out, everyone.